Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and happy Easter. I hope everyone is doing well. Today I have an interview that I've been wanting to do for a couple years now. And I'm going to share it with you guys because it just fell into my lap last night. Now, before we get into it, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And last but not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel, continue to grow and go, just simply subscribe and click the like button. It's fast and free. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's subscriber interview. Shall we? All right, everybody. Tonight, I have a special guest. I've interviewed his brother twice so far, and tonight I got the opportunity to talk with Terry. This is Jody's brother. Terry, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good, sir. How about you?
I am doing well. Thank you for taking some time out of your evening. I hope you're feeling better.
I am. I'm feeling a lot better. And I just want you to know it's an honor to be on your show because I think that you're probably the best show on YouTube out there.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. It's an honor to have you on. Just to get to talk with you. Jody's been on and he's talked real highly of you. And he's, stated that you've got a lot of experience out in the woods and you got some stuff that you want to share with us tonight. So right before we were recording, we talked for a little bit and you had mentioned the first time you and Jody had encountered something. You want to start the night off with that?
I sure would, but I'd like to just tell you something before we get started.
Yes, sir.
When Jody said all them nice things about me, it's because I paid him to do it.
I hope it wasn't too much.
No, the first time that my brother and I saw a bigfoot, I can't remember. It's probably in toward about 2009, 2007, somewhere around there. Jody can correct me if I'm wrong. But we were down in a friend's pasture area. We were loading up creek rock.
Okay.
And Jody was on the backhoe. We had loaded it up with rock, and I was up on our dump truck, and I was taking the rock and packing it into a pallet. Well, when I happened to bend over to get another rock, I saw movement out of my right eye. And I stood up and looked, and I said, Jody, do you see that? And he turned as I did, I was already looking, but he turned and there was a Bigfoot had come down off the hill, walked across the pasture and jumped across the creek into what we call laurel thickets.
Okay.
And Jody got down, back the backhoe up. He got down, I got down. He grabbed his rifle, I grabbed mine, and we ran over to the edge of the creek. Now, I don't know if you've ever been through laurel thickets before.
No, sir.
But that laurel wood is probably about 3 inches round. Some of them gets a little bit bigger, but they are some of the hardest wood that you've ever seen. When you go through a laurel thicket, you have to get down on your hands and knees and crawl.
Okay.
Well, while we were standing there, we heard that creature coming through those laurel thickets like a freight train. You could hear things breaking and a cracking and a popping.
Now, how tall is that laurel?
Laurel don't get up no more than probably 4 feet.
Okay. All right.
But after he jumped over that creek and we got over to the edge of the riverbank there, we heard a baby deer bleating. It'd go bleep, and he'd do that a while and stop.
Okay.
All right. When it was doing that noise, the Bigfoot would come on harder and faster. But when it stopped, that noise stopped. Then when the little deer would do the sound again, like I guess he was calling his mama, the Bigfoot kept coming towards the noise. And then when it done it one more time, we heard it get grabbed, and then we heard just like his neck got cracked. And then we heard the Bigfoot going up the mountain. Instead of coming sideways, it was going up the mountain. And the one thing that I'll never forget about that experience was the smell. I will never forget that smell. It was worse than a skunk smell.
Okay.
And but that was our first experience that I had with Jody.
So that Bigfoot was pretty much using sound to hunt that baby deer.
That's correct.
And it only took it how long would you say from start to finish was the hunt? Not long, it doesn't seem.
No, I'd say no more than 5 or 6 minutes.
Pretty efficient too.
Yeah, and down there where it jumped the creek, friend, a human could never do that. That river was wide, and that one, it was like in a bend, and it was wide.
Okay.
And it would have took me or my brother maybe 2 to 3 strides just to get up on the other bank. And that thing went over there in one stride.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
That was something else that I'll never forget.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. It's kind of heart-wrenching. You feel bad for the baby deer, but you know it is nature at its cruelest right there too.
That's correct. Well, when one of us would drive the load of rock out to Bryson City, the other one would stay there and gather up more rocks. And now, if you kind of picture in your mind, we're sitting in one pasture, then you cross the creek and you get into another pasture, then you cross it again into another pasture that goes down into, when you cross the creek again, you go into a wooded area going into another, before you get to another pasture, and you talk about dark. Even in daylight, it's dark down that area and real spooky.
Okay.
Well, Jody, it was a time or two that I went down in there to get rock and stuff. I felt as though I was being watched. But Jody had went down there a couple of times, and the feeling on him got so bad, and he even had a weapon with him. He said it got so bad that he felt in his heart that something bad was going to fixing to happen. So he went and got out there, and he didn't go back down there until we were both together. But other than that time, we never no other time felt that we were in any danger.
Huh.
And I really think that there was more than just one. Yeah. It might have been a family around that area.
A family of Bigfoot or Dogman or Bigfoot.
You know, we talked about Dogman. I really didn't get to knowing anything about Dogman except for maybe about 10 years ago.
Okay.
But I can tell you, when I was growing up, a couple of counters that I had, I was probably maybe 10 years old. My grandfather had an old barn that we kept the horses and the cow in. And then it had a barn loft up there. Well, for about a year or so, there would have been no horses or cows or anything in the barn, and there hadn't been no new hay put up in the barn. And most of the hay that was already put up in there was what we call loose hay. We just drag it up into a pile and load it up onto the truck and then take it up and just throw it up into the barn.
Right.
Well, I happened to be over there one day, and I don't know what I was doing, just fooling around. And I climbed up into the loft of that barn, and I'm going to tell you, I had the awfulest smell up there. And in one area, it looked like something had drug a whole bunch of the old hay into one, like a solid corner of the barn. And when I went over and looked, it looked like something had made a bed in there because it had been pushed down. But it was piled up in a way that if you looked in there, you nobody couldn't see anything.
Okay. Kind of like a nest.
Right. Well, I left. Never thought nothing else more about it. And I guess it was probably maybe a couple of weeks. We were getting ready to go home, and I had run on the head of my grandpa, and he was coming down with the truck. And I had run into the barn, and I started up the ladder. And when I got up to the ladder a little bit, I heard something growl. And I happened to turn over and look, and I saw what I thought was an ear, like a dog ear or something. And for a minute, I thought, well, there's a dog up here. I wonder if they have pups or something. Then I thought, well, dang, that's an awful big dog. Well, about that time, my grandpa hollered at me. He said, son, get down out of that loft. He says, I don't want you going back up there no more. I said, well, what is it? He said, well, I'll tell you about it later. But he never got the opportunity to tell me because he passed away.
Right.
But I think that was my first encounter with a Dogman. But I didn't see it.
The smell that you got up in the hayloft, was it different than the smell that you guys got when you were out?
Yes. It was the one big difference of the smell was the urine type smell.
Okay.
Like something had urined and then rolled in it.
All right.
So it definitely had a pungent smell to it.
Yeah.
And then plus being that close to it, that made it even that much worse.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right.
Next time, now Jody, I don't know if he's told you, but that at that barn, there'd been several times that we both had come down by that barn when it was dark, and something would growl at us. And when you look into the barn, you had a long stallway. But when at dark time you looked in there, you couldn't see nothing. So something must be standing in that stallway about halfway down, growling and watching at you. You couldn't see it or nothing. So, and if that thing come out of there, it would have come out at its advantage because it could have been on you before you knew it. That's why every time I walked down, whatever weapon I had, I always kept it pointed to my right side in case I had something come out. I could already pull the trigger.
Right.
And unknowing, after I went into the Army, Jody, he did the same thing because we had got to talking about that, and he said I'd done the same thing. He said I'd load my shotgun up with a slug or buckshot, and when I walked down there to have it pointing towards that barn, and he said there was times that I've been growled at. So whatever it was, I have no idea. But the other time was, I guess I was maybe 12, 13 years old, and over from the old house where my grandpa had lived, there was another apple tree area over that had apple trees, and a home had been built in that area at one time because there was still an old chimney standing. Well, right behind the chimney, you walked up a trail, and then it came to what you call the ridge line of a mountain. And you start at the bottom, and you just keep walking until you get to the top up there. Well, that's where I had went that day squirrel hunting. And time started getting a little bit, or nighttime started coming a little faster than what I thought. So I was on my way back down, and as I was walking down, I just got this feeling. I said, something's following me. And, I got kind of scared. Well, I had this dog with me, and when we heard a noise, he took off. He just left me there by myself. He didn't growl, bark, or anything. Well, I walked on, go ahead and went on, and as I was walking, I was shining my light. This pheasant came out of the wood line and got right in front of me walking. I said, well, dang, I've got an opportunity to bring some meat home. So I started shooting at this thing. You know, every time I shot at it, it never offered to go faster or nothing. It took me about 10 shots before I was able to bring it down. But, you know, as I look back and as me and Jody's talked, that pheasant, I believe, came out of that wood line because it knew that something was there. And it got close to me, walking in front of me for protection from whatever it was. And here I went and shot it.
Yeah.
I tell you, if I could go back, I never would have done that. But as I kept going on, I kept getting this feeling I'm being followed. Even that way, when I crossed over the pasture and went down in the woods to get to our property where it had rails we could cross over into the fence. Once I crossed over the fence and put the rails back up and started going on to the house, that feeling left me. So there was something up there. What? I don't know.
Right.
But it could have been a Dogman.
Yeah, you hear that a lot where people have that strange feeling and then they get away from the area and that feeling is gone.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Huh.
Well, did Jody, I believe he talked to you a little bit about my grandson and his friends?
Was that
where he went they were in a Jeep and they saw that white thing?
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? You want to touch bases on that one?
Yeah, let me do that.
All right.
My grandson and his friends, there was 3 of them. Okay. And the driver had a Jeep, but it didn't have no top on it. So black boys, you know, nothing to do. They decided to go riding. Well, they were going up to this Forest Service trail that comes in from where we live and goes all the way into Robbinsville. And the only way that you can get through it is with a 4-wheel drive. Well, they were going up in that road for 2 or 3 miles because there was some place where they went up there, I think, and parked.
Okay.
And they'd stay up there a while and then they'd come back down. But on this particular day, as they were driving up, one of the boys said, let me jump out and go see if they've just shut it or if it's locked. And as he ran up there and everything, the boys were sitting in the Jeep while it's still running and everything, and waiting to come back. Well, when he come back, he stopped and he looked to his left. It would be to his right on his way back. And then he come running to the Jeep real hard, hollering, hurry, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. They said, what's wrong? He says, I don't know. I seen something like a white man or a zombie coming after us. And so they backed the Jeep up and stopped and looked, and sure enough, there was some white that looked like a human was running towards them. So they took off back down the road. And as they looked back to kind of keep an eye on it, they noticed that instead of it following them up on the road, it had cut into an angle that if they kept going and he kept going, he would have run into them somewhere on the road. And it scared them boys to death. But he said as they were running, he said all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, this great big black dog showed up. And later on, they said it could have been a wolf, but he said it was big. Mm-hmm. And as they were going, he said this thing kept right up with them, and said that every once in a while he'd look over at them, and then he'd look back at what was the white thing.
Right.
And when it got to a certain area that I guess the Dogman felt like he couldn't go no further, he had to engage that white thing, or it was going to get them boys.
Yeah.
And he said all of a sudden that thing stood up on 2 hind legs, turned at them boys and smiled at them.
Wow.
And said as they kept going, it took off. And they said that when they got around to a certain curve over there, they said they heard a noise of a battle going on. They said you couldn't see nothing, but they heard what was going on over there. It's like that Bigfoot and that white thing got engaged. And they felt when they come on and told us about it and everything, not only did they feel it, but I did too, that Dogman saved their lives.
Yeah, you hear a lot. There's a lot of, those things, excuse me, those things are called like, from the creepypasta or Reddit community, they call them the rake. And, but, like me and Jody were talking, he calls him the crawler. I call him a crawler as well. But there's been a lot of stories where people have seen these two, the Dogman fighting with these creatures. I had a guy that was down south. I don't remember the state, but he actually, he went looking for a Dogman, and he'd actually seen one of these creatures. He was on like a 2-story deck looking down, and he'd seen on, the ground one of these creatures, and later on in the night he had heard like a skirmish going on. And he had said that they're kind of like mortal enemies fighting. They're very strange looking. And I 100% believe in those crawlers because there are so many real videos of them, just from regular people like you and I going out in the woods and getting startled by them. And they're absolutely terrifying to look at.
Right. Did you see that video of that little boy had went over to where they had built him a fort, and they went to open up this gate, and somebody said, "What is that, a cow over there?" And he was filming, and next thing you know, this rake or a crawler come out of there going up the hill after them, and they turned around and took off running.
No, I never saw that.
It's on YouTube. If I can find it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I never saw that. I've seen a couple where there was one, couple kids were in the woods, and these are just kids, and for them to make this video, if it was a fake, to make it look real would have cost a whole lot of money to do with the equipment. But whatever this thing was that they stumbled upon, it was set up on a tree, and they were walking through the woods, and they were like, what is that? And it kind of peered out on the side of the tree. It looked like it was hanging off of the tree, and it just dropped down onto the ground, and they started running away from it, thankfully enough. And everything ended up okay because obviously the video was posted. But it's just terrifying to see something like that. I don't know what they are. I don't want to know what they are because they really freak me out. I mean, I can accept Dogman and Bigfoot because I just something about them that I can accept. But these crawler things, I just don't really know what to think about them.
Understand? Well, let me ask you this: do you think the sightings of Bigfoot, Dogman, and other creatures?
Yeah.
Do you think they're increasing?
I don't know. People have talked about it. Like, you see it. Hey, why are there so many sightings now? And I think a lot of the sightings that we hear, are coming from different times. You know what I mean? Like 10, 15 years. I'm certain they're increasing they're becoming more brazen with their attacks on things. But with the internet now, I think there's just more access to other people hearing about it instead of word of mouth.
Okay, right. I see what you're saying.
But I most certainly think that they're becoming more brazen with the attacks and whatever, attacking people and missing people or bodies being discovered, ripped up and crap like that. But I'm not sure if they're increasing or if they've been that way the whole time. I'm sure they've acted that way the whole time to humans. Just internet's I mean, it's been around for a while. You know, for our
Right.
kid, or for my kid, it's been around her entire life. But for us,
Right.
it's
Right.
still fairly new. You know, I remember a
Right.
time when there wasn't internet. You know, and everything
Right.
was word of mouth or TV or radio.
Amen.
So yeah, I don't know. Um, Good question, but yeah, I'd have to
Well,
say
you know,
probably about the same.
you bring it up about the internet and stuff, and a lot of people see information on Bigfoot, Dogman, and stuff, and we knowing about these creatures. So I wonder, why does the government continue to cover everything up? People already know about it. They hear about it. Why do they continue to cover it up?
Tourism,
Yeah, maybe you're right.
money. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
paper industry, tourism. You know, you got to think like all these places like LBL or national parks, state parks. You know, this stuff gets out, and people are gonna not want to go there. Like feral people in Cadiz Cove.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, so that's a question for you. You ever come across any feral people out in your neck of the
No,
woods?
I've never run across any. Never
No.
have.
Okay.
No. But now I had growing up, I knew of a couple of families that had, I guess you would say, the father and the daughter. He got her pregnant,
Yeah.
and a child was born that just sort of didn't act
Yeah.
good. But that's been 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but as far as anybody in the woods and stuff, living in the woods and stuff, I've never run across them. In
All
a
right.
way, I hope I never do, unless
Yeah.
I've got me a 458 with me.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So, now you got any other experiences or
Well,
encounters or
there's one
anything?
thing I wanted to tell you a little bit.
Yeah.
You had told a story the other day about a state trooper had went up to this van and that Dogman slipped up behind him.
Yeah, in
You remember
Pennsylvania.
that? All right. Well, there was a similar situation occurred here in North Carolina on the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Okay.
It's probably sometime last year. There was a lady, and I can't remember whether she had children in the van or not, or it may have been her husband, but there's a state trooper was driving up the road, and she was coming down the road, and she was driving erratically, like maybe she was drunk, just all over the road, just flying down through there. Well, the state trooper turned around, blue lighted her, and pulled her over. And he said that when he got up to where the lady was at, said she was shaking so bad that was why the van was going back and forth, because of her shaking and her being so scared.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, calm down. He says, I'm not going to give you a ticket. He said, just want to make sure you're all right. He said, why are you so scared? And she tried to tell him, but she never could get nothing. She just kept pointing back. Well, while he said he did notice that there was some scratches and stuff on her van. And so he said, let me go back here and call somebody. I said, I just want to make sure everything's okay. And he went on back and got in his patrol car. And he said he was sitting there doing something on his computer. And he heard her holler. And then she squealed, her tires squealed, spinning gravel and everything else. She just took off down the road. And he says, what the heck? He says about that time he just happened to look in his side mirror, and he saw a wolf-like creature on 2 feet coming up the back of him. And he said he jumped up there and said he happened to have his wind about a little ways up, about a quarter of a ways up. And he said that thing jumped in with its face and stuff, and it was trying to bite him. And he said he kept getting back over and over and over to try to get away from it. And he tried to pull his pistol out to shoot at it, but somehow or another it got into the floorboard where he didn't have it anymore. And he said that thing just kept getting closer and closer and closer. And he said his shotgun was locked into the stand on a car. He said he just reached over and racked around in it and pulled the trigger. And he said, boom, and shot a hole in the car and everything. He said, but that thing turned and went back and jumped across the guardrails back down the ways. This man was scared to death, but when he got out, he took the shotgun. And if I'm correct, as he was standing out there, this thing came back again. He shot it a couple of times, and as that thing left, it scratched the side of his car like it was mad, and it scratched the side of his car going down. Well, he got back in the car. He was so scared to death, he called for help, and they arrived, and he explained what he saw, what happened. Of course, they later on determined that it was a bear, and this trooper, had to go into a mental hospital, and for a couple of weeks,
right?
And until he got where his situation. When he come out, he retired. But now that happened up on
Yeah, I don't see a black bear doing that.
No.
I just don't see I mean, maybe if it was starving or rabid but chasing a woman down, that just doesn't seem feasible for a black bear.
Now, a bear can run pretty fast, but I don't think it can go 50 or 60 miles an hour.
No, definitely not.
But they said that thing had stayed up with them.
I wonder if he was forced to, I wonder if they forced him to, put him in the hospital just to shut him up for a while, to get him out of the, out of public eye for a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know, but from what I understood, he was pretty well shook up, which I guess anybody would be.
Yeah, very smart thinking, though, to, rack around and shoot. The sound obviously was what scared the creature away. That was really intelligent to do, though.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, there was one morning we was getting ready to go down into Georgia, and we had left home about 3 o'clock. And as we were driving over this area, now we've went through that area several times, and you've seen a big black dog laying on the side of the road just watching the traffic go by. And Jody one day said, "That's a Dogman." Well, this morning we were on our way to Georgia, and as we went by this area, we saw it. And I went past it pretty fast. I said, "Jody, I'm going to turn around and go back." So as I turned around and we came back down the road, it was just like a pull-off that had a flat area where a car could park and stuff, and then the road went up the mountain. Well, we pulled in, and I rode, and it was still walking, and I rolled my window down, and I hollered, "Hey!" And it stopped. And when it turned and looked at us, its eyes were red as coal. And no, I take that back. Excuse me, his eyes was black as coal. And I'll tell you, I apologize for saying that, because the last time that we saw it, its eyes turned red. Okay, the eyes changed from a black coal to a bluish looking color to a red. And I guess you could say we was aggravating it. And you could tell it was getting aggravated at us. And while we were sitting there talking and hollering stuff at it, all of a sudden you could see the hair on the back of its neck stand up. And that's when it turned and gave us this awful look with its eyes turning red. And I told Jody, I said, "Jody, that booger's getting ready to stand up." So we took off out of there. And instead of saying, "I rebuke thee in Jesus' name," I hollered, I said, "May God bless you." I don't know why in the world I said that, but I sure did. But when you looked at that thing, you could tell it was getting ready to stand up.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. That just the eye change is pretty pretty
Right.
spectacular.
That was different. That was something completely different. And Jody might be able to remember and tell you some more about that when you talk to him.
Yeah.
You know. So, but that's about all.
Well, let me ask you something. I know that you didn't want to talk about the lake via email, but I want to talk to you about something that me and you talked about a little bit prior to, was the upload that I did that you haven't heard about the FBI woman. Now,
Right.
and now Jody had gave me a little bit of the information, and that's when I started looking into everything. And now you had kind of cleared up a little bit of the guy who had seen her taking pictures.
Right.
Now, can you share that with the audience again? So,
well, what it was, there was a place behind a flea market,
mm-hmm.
and they had turned it into a camping trailer area where people come in there and they would pay like they were paying rent each month for the use of the services and stuff, and that's where they stayed. That were their homes.
Okay.
Well, up past them, there was like a field that right before when you turn off to come down into the area, there was like a field out there, probably maybe 50 yards long, maybe half a football field wide. And then up on the upper side where the road ran, there was like a bunch of white pine that was standing up there. I think people plant those, to give them privacy and stuff.
Right.
Well, he said as he walked up there, he said he stopped and he noticed this car. And he said that at the time he couldn't tell what it was, but he said as he looked up into the trees up there, he saw two large things standing there and something small. And he said that one of them you could see like a wolf's ear standing up. But he said on the second one, when he looked at it, he said it looked like a ram's horn was on its head.
Okay.
And like we talked, that could have been just its ears turned back.
Laying down or whatever, yeah.
Right. Well, he said that when he was filming these things, he said he turned over and saw that the woman that was in that car had a camera with a long lens on it, and she was taking pictures of him. But he also said that when she stopped taking pictures of him, said she went back to looking at these creatures, and he thought maybe that she might have been their handlers. Mm-hmm. Because when she left, they left too. They were not seen anymore.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and that wasn't too long after that the Kathleen Miller was found, the FBI agent was found dead. So right. That's what got me looking into that whole thing. And that video is up right now, so you can take a listen to it. And it happened in your neck of the woods, so I'd appreciate it if you let me know what you think of it. If I
will. And that person who took those videos, mm-hmm. Me and Jody one of us will try to get up with him and see if we can get a copy of that video.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
We'll send it to you.
Yeah, it'd be great. I'd love to see that. I'd really love to see it. So,
okay. But that's been about all I've done.
Well,
seen right here.
I appreciate you coming on. I really do. I've talked to, like I said, I've had Jody on a couple times, and I when Jody reached out to me the last time, I said, listen, tell your brother that he sent me that email and I've never shared it yet. I said, but can I share it sometime? And he said, I'll share it. And, I appreciate you, coming on tonight. And I know that you're going to talk about it sometime here in the future, but you just want to kind of talk to a couple other people to get the facts straight and everything right. So But it means the world to me that you came on tonight, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I sure do thank you, and I especially thank you for allowing me to be your guest. And like I said at the beginning, you're my number one go-to, and I know it has to be Jody's same thing. When we go on YouTube, the first thing we want to do is look and see what you've uploaded.
Well, that. I appreciate that. I really do. It's humbling to hear, to be honest with you.
And you know, being a small businessman like you're doing, which I consider you a businessman, you do this sort of for a living, you have to be one of the finest men that I've ever met in my life.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's an honor to call you my friend.
Well, same here. Same here.
And if you ever want to call me and just like you said, chew the fat.
Yeah.
You've got my number. Just give me a holler.
Absolutely.
And I'll get back with you in the next few days.
All right. Do me a favor though. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience before we end the upload? But don't hang up because I want to talk to you for a few minutes after we end the upload. But is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we end here?
Well, I'd just like to tell the audience that y'all have a good man to listen to hear the stories being told by. And I just want to make a statement that when you go out in the woods, don't ever go alone.
Mm-hmm.
And also make sure you have a weapon.
Yeah. And
make sure that your vehicle is parked in a way, just like in the military, when we pulled into an area, we always backed in so that the vehicle was in a ready position to get out of there.
And leave it unlocked.
Right. And I suggest you, when you go in the woods like that, park your vehicle, turn it around so that if you have to get out of there in a quick, fast way, it's ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, definitely some good advice right there. Some good advice.
Well, I thank you for allowing me to be here.
All right.
I hope everybody enjoys it.
Hey, you have yourself a blessed Easter, all right, my friend?
All right, you do the same, and may God bless you and your family and watch over you.
As you too. Don't hang up, okay?
Okay, partner.
All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's interview as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Yeah, I've been trying to get Terry on for, a couple of years now. And Jody had went down and talked to him to get him to come on. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know I was going to be doing this interview. I was actually working on something completely different. I saw the phone number come up and I knew it was Terry. I answered it and out came this interview. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed doing it. So with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please, everyone, have a happy Easter. Have a safe Easter. Enjoy your family. And may the Great Spirit watch over us. May He guide us down that path that we call life.